Welcome to the Ripples of Perception series. I'm Lisa Hayes.
I'm Iva Nasr.
We're so excited you're here joining us because just as casting a pebble into a pond creates ripples, so do we as we go through life.
Please stay with us through the series as Lisa and myself, in each segment, share a variety of stories, downloads, and experiences that enrich our understanding of perception.
Are you ready to get started?
More than ready.
So, Iva, we've talked a lot about multidimensional realities and how parallel lives affect us here and now. You've mentioned a very fascinating example of this whereby it healed something in your current life when you remembered what I like to call a simultaneous life. Would you like to expand on
Yeah,
that?
you're talking about when I used to get laryngitis.
Yeah, I didn't want to give it away.
Yeah. Well, there are so many stories. And do help keep me on track if I start going into too much detail, okay?
Okay, right on.
Yes. So years ago, I noticed that when I started professionally starting to speak in public, that when an invitation came to me to speak in public, I would start losing my voice. So much so that the first several times I would have full on laryngitis and I would have to turn it down or reschedule or. And around that time, I had started becoming a little bit more aware of what I am today in terms of understanding, the more multidimensional reality and experience of life and afterlife and just the continuity of experience. And then, in more recent days, it's been talking about parallel realities and all of that. Maybe you and I will get more into the topic. But at the time, I was fresh into this vocabulary. When one day I got an invitation to speak. Actually, in those days, it was Borders Bookstore. I don't know if you remember when that chain, at least
Yeah,
in the Midwest.
that's not
Yeah,
here anymore.
I don't think so. Anyway, and I had the invitation to be on an open panel talking about uh, instantaneous healing and some other concepts. Okay, so what does my throat do? It starts giving me that little tickle, and within a couple days, I'm moving toward losing my voice. One night, I had a dream, and it was one of those dreams that was so lucid that I couldn't tell that it was a dream. I was there. Long story short, and believe me, this is long story short, I dreamt that my head was severed at a guillotine in a valley of France. So much more detail to all of this. One outcome of the dream was that I hadn't remembered before, is that before the blade hit my neck, and I know it sounds a little gruesome, but that's enough to take your voice away, right? Before the blade hit my head, I simultaneously from that dream, and now I'm in seemingly real time of remembering other episodes, apparently, of my life on this earth. that I had also witnessed part of the crucifixion of Christ, all new to me in terms of conscious memory. So one scene led to that moment where the blade was about to be released. And I remember giving myself the chance to think and feel and say, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And it might sound a little presumptuous.
Not at all.
To be in a moment of empathy and compassion like that with brethren, with fellow beings. But that's what happened in that moment. And then goes on the dream, and then I wake up in sweat and almost paralyzed and parched and just so thirsty. I go for a drink of water and had another phenomenal experience for another time, that part of the story. Point being, I came out from a few hours of going to bed and waking up with an entire era of recollection, processing through this mind, body, and spirit, through my realm of perceptions, of knowledge. And my laryngitis cleared in that moment. And moving forward, I hardly ever lost my voice again when I was speaking my truth in public, especially a truth that might bend people's beliefs a little bit or bringing in something that's unusual. Anyway, one other time since then, I started to go in that process of losing my voice, but I started recognizing those little tickles like days before. I became so much more sensitive to intercepting that pattern that was so ingrained in my psyche. And I brought in conscious affirmations, conscious choices, actions into that and redirected it so that I never ever experienced that pattern with my voice being taken away, and became more and more refined over time in speaking my truth and actually calling in the celebration with that, as opposed to being so petrified and basically fighting for my life. Like, I better not speak because my head might get cut off again.
Right.
I didn't even know that was happening, Lisa. So that shift in my awareness changed my life. I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you had it not been for that dream state experience that actually was more like multiple realities still current in my existence. Like everything was still happening all at once.
Have you ever seen, well, I know you have, movies like The Groundhog Day, where it's a replay of the day over and over again until you reach the point where you just love life despite the situation, or you can say, you can let go of judgment, and you can forgive, for they know
A
not
chance
what.
for a redo, basically.
Yeah, at that crucial point in time when you're getting ready to get decapitated, for you to be able to look at your captors and say, forgive them, for they know not what they do, to have no judgment, it's almost as if you were given an opportunity to travel back to that point, or travel over to that point, if it's a parallel life, and redo, rather than resist and be mad and angry and upset and scared to death, all of that. You were able to redo it in a way that relieved you of the horror and fear, and gave you and brought in the compassion for your persecutors.
It gave me a chance to reconcile within my own internal experience
Mm-hmm.
of myself in reference to my outside world. It was liberating.
Mm-hmm.
It was elevating. And it gave me, no pun intended, voice
Mm-hmm.
to continue to share this liberation with others. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, that's the gift to me.
Right. Do you
Is
feel
yeah,
that, excuse me for interrupting, but this is important, I think.
yeah.
Are you able to download now or recall what the reason was that they were decapitating you?
I mean, honestly, I've part of what I've also learned over the years, and these days I'm really trying to apply it so consistently, is not being so attached to the details
Okay.
as to what happened or why. I can tell you, I can come up with a few Hollywood scripts and
Yeah.
possibly what happened and what led to that moment, but the way my voice would disappear
Mm-hmm.
when I was going to speak my
Truth.
truth, especially about things that historically we know and we hear from so many different accounts, where the drownings, the being burnt at the stake, the or even like, we can relate to this. I know this gets a little bit more political, but just the inequality between men and women's salaries sometimes on the same job, same position. Where does this, like, it all ties in
Right.
to a time when unnecessarily we are held back from being ourselves and experiencing our worth in this life.
So, in the ripples of perception throughout all of our parallel lives, it's as if, what I'm hearing, it's as if you became aware in this dream that if you let go of this idea of being persecuted for sharing your truth, and despite the situation, regardless of whether your head was going to be cut off or not, you were able to let go of being a victim and knowing that you could still feel compassion. And once you reached that point in that moment, you were able to carry that through into this reality and no longer experience the fear of speaking in case you'd get persecuted again, because it was almost like your body had a defense mechanism. I'm going to get laryngitis because I don't want to be decapitated again.
Of course, it's self-preservation. What happened also, everything you just said, and it also gave me more strength and courage and a lot more creativity and a lot more access to a realm of my mind and existence that I had put on hold or forgotten or hadn't known yet, to know how to stand up for myself as well, which is important.
It is
in this life, on this earth, to know who you are and to be confident and courageous and simultaneously be graceful and humble and discerning when to speak, when not to speak, is a good thing to know. So it's all of those things.
Yes. And I know that for me, similar to what you're describing here, is that I had this urge to do this kind of speaking that we're doing today for a long time. However, I recognize within myself that I had this fear of persecution, and it wasn't the guillotine in a past life or simultaneous life. It was the audience persecuting me, the fear of rejection. And I realized I had to get over that. I had to get over that because that's just a perception that was limiting me.
And even if part of it is real, not everyone needs to listen to
And
what
am
we
I
have to say.
and am I
you know,
judging?
yes,
Am I
yes,
judging people incorrectly?
exactly.
Or judging, oh, they're not ready to hear, blah, 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 you know, whatever. So I had to let all that go in order for me to be able to get up on stage, in a sense, you know. So to summarize a little bit here, Iva, I think we've hit something crucial here from the standpoint that how many people have a fear of speaking
Or being themselves
and speaking their truth?
Mm-hmm.
And why is that?
Mm-hmm.
And again, you had this gift of being able to have this teleportation to a simultaneous life in a very lucid dream, but it was a teleportation because you kind of felt paralyzed when you woke up, you said. However, we can do this in real time right now by just understanding that we no longer have to perceive others judging us, because if we don't judge people, they're not going to judge us, because it has to start with us.
Well, and even if they do, we don't have to filter it the same way.
Yeah.
And just one last note in this wrap up, that who knows, maybe you and I right now have our own perceptions and even what a past life or a simultaneous life is.
Mm-hmm.
The most significant part of it to me, if we drop all the labels, is that there was information in me somewhere from somewhere, where it came from, why there was innate intelligence within me and from my guidance that helped me script that story in a dream in a way that just gave me an option. Am I going to speak up, or am I going to lose my voice? And again, ripples of perception.
Mm-hmm. But you literally lost your voice, which is so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then this dream brought a cure into this reality through your perception in your dream, and your forgiveness and non-judgment in your dream was carried forward into this reality. And I really feel like allowed you to stand tall and straight at the podium to speak your truth without the fear of persecution from anyone in the audience. Exactly. And you're, like you've said, if they disagreed with you or whatever, it's okay not to judge that they're wrong and I'm right, because it's okay to disagree. I love that. And I think that the takeaway here is the time is now to speak our truth, because that ripples out, as we've said before, far and wide, and impacts us all in a very good way.
Agreed.